Yep. I believe you're going to do a presentation and.
Yep. Okay. Right. Thank you, Chair Huntsman. As I mentioned in my remarks this morning, we're before you to talk a little bit about the board's strategic direction and plan. And we'll flip through a few slides just as a reminder. We'll give you a little quiz. And then we're going to talk about, I knew that would wake some of you up, and then we're going to update you on some changes that we've made and the forward momentum that we have with the strategic plan, and then we have an ask of the board in terms of some motions. So we'll start with just kind of a reminder of where we've been with the direction. And we've got a whole slide deck that we continue to improve upon through planning and implementation, but we want to skip to one that just, this is slide 6. Yeah. Right there. Okay. Just to remind you of the components of the strategic plan. And I hope that having our plan, the mission, vision, and the goals in front of you has really been helpful. So I want you to all look at me right now. This would be a teacher thing, all eyes on me. And without looking back or at any screen, just eyes on me or the lovely Tiffany Stanley, I want you to say out loud what our 4 goals are. Just out loud. And if you mumble, we won't know the difference. So just say what the 4 goals are. Say them out loud, everybody. Okay, that was pitiful. So if you do nothing else, just if you get in your mind these 4 topics of early learning, personalized teaching and learning, safe and healthy schools, and effective educators and leaders. And there's really strategic verbiage that wraps around those 4 topics, but it helps anyone that you interact with to know the 4 pillars or the things that we're working on that you determine are high leverage items to move education forward in this state. So with each of those 4 goals, we have strategies, actions, and targets. And you have approved through the strategy stage, and then as staff, we indicated that we would be working on actions and targets, and you don't really get into the weeds at that level, but we're always happy to talk to you about what we've been doing. So we'll show you some samples, or at least one sample of what that looks like and how that's played out this year. Do you want to go to the next slide 8, so 2 more. So just to remind you of an example of a strategy. So under the goal of early learning and the language that wraps around that goal is each student starts strong through the early grades with a foundation in literacy and numeracy. And then there were 4 strategies. These are main strategies that you adopted with actions underneath. So I want to talk a little bit about, slide 12, about now how we're getting to implementation. And next slide. The roles of our staff in working through this implementation plan. So we decided that it's something we wanted everybody involved with. It's not just a few key leaders, and often you'll see directors and above really engaged in the strategic plan and owning the strategic plan, and we want a whole system that owns the strategic plan down to the classroom level. And it may not be a school strategic plan or a district strategic plan, but we want our whole education system on these 4 goals and understanding how we're getting at these. So for us, that means that everyone in our agency really understands and helps move forward the strategic plan. So we have goal leaders, and again, we tried to be really strategic about who that was and do some cross-collaboration. And then within those goals, we have some strategy facilitators and team members. So Tiffany is going to talk about the format and the way that we came about this, and then show you a sample. And I want to reiterate the main part of Tiffany's role as chief of staff has been to really guide this work of the strategic plan and ensure that we keep moving forward on that strategic plan. And so that sometimes means convening people together, checking in, doing stock takes, and working with our partners in the field. So take it away, Chief of Staff Stanley.
Thank you. So I think she's introduced me. I'm Tiffany Stanley, Chief of Staff. So the first task our strategy teams have been tackling is to create performance plans. So through these plans, we are working to identify a specific measurable target that defines what success would look like for the strategy. And then based on that target, identifying high leverage action steps to move the needle. This is a strategic performance management approach that will help us to quantify our contribution, and I'll show you what that looks like through an example in a moment. So the next step beyond that will be to actually begin implementing. So we'll use continuous improvement and project management tools to assist us with that. But that at a high level is just sort of the approach that we've begun taking to implement. So an example of what I mean by quantifying our contribution and what this looks like in terms of measurement is, so we have the goal of early learning. An example of a measure that would enable us to know whether we're making progress on that goal would be the % proficient in literacy by 3rd grade. So then at the strategy level, and what these teams are working on is, one of the strategies is promote high quality instruction in every early grade. So they're working to identify a target, a measurable target, that would enable us to know whether that strategy is working. So an example might be percentage at benchmark on Acadiance reading. Then the team is working to identify actions that would help us move the needle on that strategy and that target. So an example would be provide targeted technical assistance to schools based on KEEP data, the kindergarten entry and exit profile. So here's where you get into performance measures. Those are smaller grain and focused on the input or the action that you're taking. So things like number % of target schools receiving the technical assistance, the effectiveness of the technical assistance, the impact of the technical assistance. And then you get into continuous quality improvement, doing those small tests of change with monthly metrics.
So I think this is really key for the board to understand. My experience over the years with strategic planning is that you get a lot of platitudes and hopes and goals that without getting to this granular level of continuous quality improvement, they're in a binder and they sit on a shelf or they're on a plaque or on a poster on the wall. And while some things might get accomplished without this granular level and a plan in place that's really actionable and monitored, we don't move the needle very far. So part of what we've done then is to be, all of us have been really trained and coached on this model of continuous improvement. So it's been we're trying to get into a way of being and a mindset that's a little bit different in how we've worked in the past around continuous improvement, and then parlay that into very actionable steps towards their strategic plan. And by doing so, we can report back to you how we're making improvement on your strategic plan. Quarterly, sometimes monthly. It just depends on the strategy. We should be able to report back to you how we're moving the needle.
Yes, and it builds in an evaluation method to know whether these are even the right strategies to be focusing on through this measurement approach. So I might pause there to show quickly an example of where, so this is not easy. It's especially not easy in spaces where it's more of an emerging space where we don't have as much evidence on, or as much measurement built in, or as much evidence on the linkages between inputs all the way to outcomes. So an example of that is in the personalized learning space, as you might imagine. But quickly to show you an example of the performance plan for that strategy. So one of the strategies under personalized learning is to support districts and schools in providing a personalized learning plan for each student. So the performance plan calls for staff to identify and articulate the strategic rationale or why we would do that, and then goes into that target, like I mentioned, in this space, it's not as outcome-oriented as the early learning space, but it is actionable, measurable, and includes a date by which we would accomplish something. So this would be to establish a personalized learning model plan template to be available to LEAs as a working draft by July 31st, 2022. And then, we go through the actions to outline what we'll be doing in the next couple of years, all the steps that it would take to get us to that end state. So that's just it's in your backup, but gives you a quick idea of what I mean by performance plans, and also some of the challenges associated with doing this work, especially in an emerging space.
So then if you look up to the square on mission and just that's a reminder of how we do our work. So the vision is aspirational, where we're trying to get to, and the mission, how we go about that. And I think one of the things that has been both challenging and exciting for staff is trying to recognize their roles. So we're leading by creating equitable conditions. And we do that by advocating for resources, developing policy, and providing oversight and support. So when we talk about support, sometimes we're leading out on that, we're innovating, we're providing actual technical assistance and support. So that's sort of a broad category, but it's I think that's been part of the excitement around this for opportunities, but also the challenge when it comes to metrics, because when you look at the way we do our business, we're a support system, and we're not in the classrooms, and we're not leading the schools. So we're once removed from that, at least once removed, sometimes 2 and 3 levels removed. So thinking about how we then create metrics to make a difference, and then what our role is in that, has been amazing to see how our staff has worked through that.
Okay, so shifting into this space where we are seeking action. So in addition to the work we've been doing internally to implement the plan, we've also been working to create a tagline to accompany the board's logo to build a more concrete identity for the agency. A way to think about this effort, I think, is to distill the board's mission statement into just a couple of words that really resonate, because the mission statement is quite lengthy, and I think there's a lot of great meat there, but to have a couple of words that could accompany our forward-facing logo that would resonate with people. So we worked with a PR firm, Penna Powers, to identify this tagline. We were excited to work with them because they have a lot of experience in public relations and communications within both the government and the private sector. And the process that we went through included meetings with leadership of the agency and of the board to describe the way that we see ourselves as an agency. So our mission statement, but then also, some conversations around the way that we see ourselves. And then they took that information back and worked to distill that into just a couple of words that could communicate our identity to stakeholders. And they came up with several options, and leadership landed on this one. So the motions for your consideration are...
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. So some of the imagery and conversations that we had with Penna Powers about their this particular choice, trying to not completely change the board logo, keep the logo intact, but tie in a forward-thinking way and tie somehow the flame. We thought about, when we think about our pioneer heritage in Utah, it was sort of a pioneer way of thinking of forging forward and forging through the canyon. So there's that literal imagery. There's also the flame of forging and welding things together and making something new and strengthening. Like if you think the actual beating of welding, there's this strength piece to that. So there were a lot of different ways that we could provide thinking and imagery around the terminology of forging. So we considered all of those things with all of the verbiage. And I don't know, Chair Huntsman and Vice Chair Cummins, if you want to weigh in on the presentation around this particular verbiage to the logo.
Do you want to? You can go first, or I can. Go ahead.
The first time I saw it, I took a minute to kind of settle in. But I think one of the things that I appreciated about it is that it's far away from a lot of the catchphrases that you often hear in education, where, it's college and career and, all this stuff. But Forging Futures talks about, what is the opportunity for all of our students and whatever their futures might look like as they participate in society. We're not talking about just the job market or just college and career, but their full future and what that looks like, and the work involved in it, both on their part and our part in their behalf and everybody else that's involved in the process. So it just kind of grew on me after a while, but just that concept that it's just a very open statement that's not overly used or trite in the education world.
And when I first saw it, and of course we're not telling them what they can or can't really do, I didn't want to interfere with a lot of their work, but in my world, it's, I've been in this through my businesses and different things of kind of taglines and branding and that. And at first I had to think just for a second, and then all of a sudden it just flowed real easy for me to attach all of the great direction that we're doing to the tagline of Forging Futures, and it is unique just to us. And when it comes to public education in the state of Utah, a tagline would connect us with a lot of the education community, from the parents, students, legislators, businesses, and I pushed it even further than that. It's just not about education, it's forging future Utah citizens that are going to participate in the workplace and in society. And I just saw a lot of opportunity with the tagline moving forward. So I'm not selling it. I'm ready to embrace it, and it'd be easy to move. And I just want to jump back to our 4 goals. Those 4 goals, there's certain legislators out there, and this isn't all about the legislators, but they've heard this and heard it, that could probably do a little better job than we can getting them, because that's all they're hearing. Everything that we're doing moving forward from our legislative asks, from funding and everything else, is tied into this. And I see the Forging Futures as even tying something a little tighter with the 4 goals. But I'm good. I'm more than good. I think it's a very unique, and we are unique. So I don't know what else you want. I don't want to sell it.
No, that was great. We just wanted a little background before speaking to the ask we have of the board.
Yes, so the motions.
I have one other question.
Oh, go ahead.
Someone else wanted to dive in. Was it Scott? Okay.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there any problem with using Forging Futures as far as trademarks or being in use somewhere else? I just did a quick search and saw it's a counseling service or something, so someone is using it, but yeah, are we okay? Have we checked that?
We did check. Thank you for that question. Board member Linda Hansen was great to Google that early on, doing her homework, and so we checked directly with Penn and Powers because it's a tagline. It's a little different than a trademark. They were great to check in and see the social media ticks for that particular company or association. They have a very small social media presence. They're located in Pennsylvania. We're in Utah. They feel like they're 2 completely different markets. So they did a lot of research and came back with about 6 or 7 talking points where they didn't feel that there were any concerns. Mark Peterson also weighed in and felt like there weren't any concerns from a publicity standpoint either. But we really appreciated Board Member Hansen bringing that to our attention so that we could check it out earlier today in response. So we appreciate it. The world of Google now, we have to really check on those things. So thank you.
So the motions that we would recommend, so one would be to amend, to really promote alignment between this tagline and the mission statement, would be that we amend the mission statement by deleting the word leads and inserting the words is Forging Futures. So the Utah State Board of Education is forging futures by creating equitable conditions for student success, and then the rest of the mission statement. The other motion would be to direct staff to add the Forging Futures tagline to the board logo and develop a style guide defining usage and application of the logo with and without the tagline.
Okay, Board Member Janet Cannon.
I just have a question. Sid, when you asked us, what are the 4 pillars? They didn't come to my mind. What came to my mind immediately was education elevated. And so I'm wondering, what is the relationship between education elevated and this new Forging Futures? Because I noticed in some of here you have education elevated targets. You're using that. So can you differentiate the two for me, please?
Yes, that's a great question. So the prior board adopted Education Elevated as a tagline around the metrics that we were trying to achieve. And we didn't have all of this infrastructure to the strategic plan at that time. We set 5-year goals that were very data-driven. So graduation rates, proficiency rates, enrollment in advanced courses by underrepresented populations, closing of achievement gaps. So it's really our report card, our state report card around trying to move the needle to our goals. And remember that it was cutting gaps by 1/3 between our current baseline and our desired results. So that's how we wrap that around Education Elevated. So Forging Futures really describes our mission and the work of the strategic plan. And we have shared the mission, vision, and the 4 goals broadly, and even down to the strategy level. When you had your breakfast with legislators last year, we rolled this out. We've been rolling this out and talking to people about it, but again, not at the granular level, because that, when we get to action steps, that's our work for you. What we've been lacking is a way to package that in a very concise manner, as Tiffany described earlier. So you'll see on a lot of other state agency websites, they have a 2 or 3 word tagline, and it's kind of on everything, and it shows momentum. Those taglines show that something's happening instead of just the logo sitting out there of Utah State Board of Education. Not that that's not compelling to people, but you want to see some kind of momentum and some energy and action around it. So I really appreciate your question, because I think that has been the confusing part of how many years has it been since we adopted the language of Education Elevated? It was maybe 4 years ago. It was right when I first started, right? 4 years ago. So it's been sitting out there capturing that report card and the sort of the more standardized metric look. So we need something a little different now as a marketing tool for your strategic plan.
Brittany, you want to weigh in? I just want to throw another thing out that I see this opportunity is we've been, compared to other agencies and entities out there, we've been really quiet. We're like the sleeping giant that's not getting our word out. And so a way to really roll out the sleeping giant here and the many wonderful things that happening here in the state of Utah with public education, it's good to start with something fresh, something new, and the PR side and a few other avenues on basically marketing and sharing success that's happening here in our state. So this way's a pretty good way for staff to launch that. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
Can I make a motion?
Okay.
I'd like to move that the board amend USBE's mission statement by deleting the word leads and inserting the words is forging futures.
Okay, I don't have that on my screen, but I can turn and read it here. The motion before do we have a second? Second. Flynn? The motion before the board is that the board amend USB's mission statement by deleting the word leads and inserting the words, quote, is forging futures, end quote. Discussion to the motion, Board Member Jenny Earl.
Yeah, I'm trying to love this, and for some reason I don't, and that's not demeaning. I think, even Brittany, your initial response was, it took me a minute to that's concerning to me that it takes a minute to get into it. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and I know there's been a lot of effort put in. We've hired someone to help with this. I just am concerned that where it's not an initial, oh, I'm into that. I like that. That doesn't mean I have any great ideas. So I'm not trying to dismiss that. I'm just saying, what is it? We do want some kind of a accelerating tagline. I'm just not loving this, and I'm not sure why. I'm having to convince myself to do that, and that's concerning that I'm having to do that. My question is, I know we've checked out where it is on Google, the social media, but have we actually run anything where we've taken, I don't know, like a consumer, not a consumer report, but do you know what I mean, where consumers themselves are going, oh, that means this to me, or that, do you know what I'm saying? So that you're getting response from the public themselves before we change such a big thing. And it really is, it becomes a face, right? That's what we want. So before I feel comfortable voting on this, I want to kind of feel what it looks like in the public. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And we kind of know where it's at social media wise, but I guess because initially I didn't go, oh, I love that, or that just sings to me kind of a thing. If I have to convince myself that maybe is a little concerning. So, and I know there's been a lot of effort, so I'm not trying to dismiss that by any means, but I wonder if there's, and maybe you guys have done the reach out to the public and just get there without any, any background saying, what do you think? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
The one thing that's interesting is this company that that's under contract here is like one of the top in the western states, and then when you get here, but they're not here to represent what's happening here. But in this, if it's too simple, it won't be remembered also. And so that was a part that I hesitated, and then all of a sudden I'm going, okay. Then my mind went to implementing, because I thought it would be something like making education happen, some really simple thing with a guarantee. But when you grab one of these, there's no guarantee. It's all what's attached to it. It's all about the support that you put behind it as you're out there messaging moving forward. But I was there where you were at, only for kind of a moment, but I've rolled these things out before. But Brittany, did you?
Yeah. And I just want to clarify my hesitation. It just took me a moment to, what does this mean? Because most of the lines are just obvious, like college and career ready, or it's really quick and short and quick. But this was a moment of, what does it mean to forge, first of all, and what to forge means, right? Because you take that moment to say, well, what does that mean technically? And so it's just that slow moment. And to me, it's almost a benefit to the tagline, because somebody's not just passing it off as like, boop, I get it, yeah, of course, that's what you're going to say. But it's using words that are just a little bit different, so that the person has to stop and think about, well, what does it mean to forge futures? And then you kind of go into that process of really thinking through, well, forging requires a lot of work. And it's not just this really simple, like Board Member Huntsman or Chair Huntsman says, it's not a simple, we guarantee that your kids are going to be successful, but it's going to take work on our part and their part to get to their future and their decisions. And so to me, it wasn't like I have to force myself to like it, but I have to pause to really kind of digest it and like, I like it. So that's what I meant when it.
Board Member Lear.
Because we're all in spaces and places, I'm in the same space that Jenny is. And I, in fact, what came to my mind was, and especially in the light of the news, is the other meaning of forging. And the negative meaning of forging. But I don't have any better ideas either. And I was even looking at F words, and no good F words came to mind. So I don't know. I wish it kind of spoke to me a little more urgently, but I don't have any better ideas. And I like the idea of having a 2-word kind of slogan. That's a good idea. So I don't know. I'm a little bothered by the double meaning of forging.
Board Member Mark Marsh.
For me, this one jumped right out at me immediately, but I think it's more because of the craftsman type of a life I've come from. I can remember playing when we shouldn't be on my grandfather's forge, trying to bend something back into place that we had almost broken. But it's taking a simple piece of material and changing it into something else, and it's really up to the person's imagination as to what they want it to look like and what the outcome is going to be of it. It can be something simple, it can be something extraordinary, and so it talked to me, but then again, like you said, there's different levels of society that see it differently. So I like it myself. It was instant for me.
Well, we have a motion on the table. And I also want to say what's really nice about this is that it was staff-driven with a lot of effort coming to us, and it's not really required, we're going to accept or reject, but it's who's pushing the message out stronger than we ever will be staff. But Cindy, did you want to weigh in? Okay, question. A good time for a question. Okay, there's a motion on the table, but it's going to help you with your...
Well, no, I just wondered if it would be appropriate to add to the motion in a month, or if it would be problematic to take this vote in a month, so those that are struggling could have some time to feel, forge into momentum on it.
Okay. Board Member Lear?
Was there a second place? Did we vote for 1, 2, and 3, or what was second place, or was there anything?
Yeah, we have a motion.
There were 4 options, but this one just really
Oh, we're
stood
gonna-
out among the other
Motion's on
4.
the table.
It really was like first and then the others.
Yeah, the others were not compelling. So we started about, at least I think a year ago, doing a search of all the other education agencies, looking at what are their taglines. So you see things like Nevada First or Tennessee Succeeds, and so, when this was so different to me that, and again, I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but just to say that there are a lot of real generic education taglines out there. And so it was actually Chair Huntsman that gave us this challenge a while ago to say, what is something that makes you want to stop and know more and look and get engaged and capture? You could see it on a billboard, or you could see it on a piece of paper, and you'd kind of want to know what it is. I want to go back to something that Board Member Cannon said, if I may, and that I just remember this discussion 4 years ago around Education Elevated, and you had lovers and haters. It was kind of divided, and suddenly, you look at the license plate Utah Elevated, and now everything's elevated. And while I love the phrase, I was a champion of Education Elevated. I think Dave Thomas and I had a wrestling match out in the hall over it. So I was pretty passionate about it, but it's interesting how quickly that caught on to a lot of different things. So now everything is elevated. So I think the challenge, we can certainly go back and do this again. There's nothing wrong with looking again. I want to answer Cindy's question, or Board Member Davis's question, though, about timing. So backwards mapping, as you meet in January with legislators, we'll have a breakfast meeting with them again. Part of it is trying to have this all packaged before the session so that we roll it out and it's like there's a media campaign around it, that it doesn't just appear quietly somewhere. So that's just the only time constraint. It doesn't have to be today, but we're trying to backwards map to just have that in place moving forward, because we want that tagline to be on everyone's mind given the media attention that will be around it. So whatever it is.
Scott Nelson?
Yes, I move the previous question.
Okay, we're going to vote on this to end debate. All in favor, say aye.
Chair Huntsman?
Those opposed?
You missed,
Yeah,
board member Newell.
well, I know, I'm going in order. On your cue, you can see that, right? Joel?
This is two-thirds.
That's two-thirds. So all in favor say aye. Those that want to end debate, raise your hand. Okay. Motion. Well, there's a couple more that were in here. Okay, Board Member Scott Hansen.
Just quickly, I don't have a real problem with forging futures. It didn't really catch me, but I think it does capture our mission. But I think that our audience isn't necessarily just the people who are sitting around this table. Our audience is people who are out there, and I think we're trying to appeal to people in Utah, parents, students. And I wondered what it would take to do even an informal focus group. Just put this in front of some people and see, whether that catches them as part of our process. So that would just be my suggestion.
Board Member Sean Newell.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. I like it for one significant reason. When we look at our state flag, one of the key words in there is industry. And when we add on this tag of forging the future, it ties right into that. We have to, when you're a branch of an entity, your brand is important, and the messages that you send are important. So I think it's real critical that we take a deep dive and look at this and see how it ties into what our state represents. And this is really key to it, and I think it's a very powerful way to maintaining that brand and staying a part of the brand of the state of Utah. And I'd like to make a motion that we end debate.
Thank you, Sean. I got 2 votes now.
Actually, that needs to be seconded.
I gotta have a second.
Yeah.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Did it carry unanimous? I didn't know if I heard that. Okay.
Chair
Okay,
Huntsman.
moved. Okay. The motion before the board is that, oh, here we go. Now it's on my computer. Okay. Is that the board amend USBE's mission statement by deleting the word leads and inserting the words is forging futures. All in favor, say. What did I?
No, debate is ended, but when the motion is made, we cannot, as staff, amend the motion, but we
Hold it.
want to add a caveat, so I don't know how to do that.
Hold it. Okay, I have a motion. So
I
the
can't
motion
amend it
is
as
that-
staff.
That we're amending the board.
Can we get a recommendation from staff before we vote?
So because we cannot make amendments,
Does
sir,
anyone-
we just have a possible solution. So we've ended debate about the motion, and we're wondering how to,
Okay, with the
We can't
motion-
make an amendment.
So we ended debate, which puts you in you have to deal with the motion.
okay.
So does the speaker, so the person that made the motion, that this is your motion, right? Okay. We have we can't do anything with it. So before I call this on a Superintendent, before I call for a vote, did you want to make a comment? Because,
I do not want to go against protocol, sir.
well, no, this is against, we have a
Sure,
motion.
At your purview, okay,
Okay.
at the
So what
chair's
is, what is
discretion.
it?
Well, just with the caveat that if we move forward with the motion as stated, that we would hold informal focus groups, and if it goes horribly, or even close to that, we would come back to you.
Okay, without any objection, and the person making the motion, are you fine with that? Yes?
Yes.
And who seconded it?
Is that an amendment that you're making?
Yeah,
or just
we're revising the motion, okay? All right, who seconded her motion? The original?
I only need to know there was a second.
Without any objection, we have,
You don't have to go back.
yeah, I don't have to reference a second. Okay, so the motion is the board amend this after you take it to a, yeah, focus groups. Okay, are we good with that amendment to this motion? Well, I'm not typing it. But-
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's revised it yet because it's not showing up on my screen. She's trying to get to that.
Figure out how to word it.
Say it one more time. Okay, question while you're trying to amend it. Brittany. Now, let me turn this on.
Just a technical question. Is it necessary to amend the motion? Because we can bring this back on an agenda. If they do a focus group and it is like a disaster, of course, they're going to come back to the board with an agenda item. So I'm, rather than figure out how to put it on, I'm guessing it's just,
Well, it's-
it's always an option to bring it back.
Okay, so here's the motion. I'll just state the motion. That the board amends USBA's mission statement by deleting the word leads and inserting the word is forging futures. If acceptable, after reaching out to focus groups. Okay. We're going to put this to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Will the ayes raise your hand? Ayes. Okay. Bell, there is, okay, Belknap, Marsh, Mike Haynes, Sean Newell, Cindy Davis, Board Member Cannon, Board Member Lear, Board Member Gravitt, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, me, 10. Motion passes. Okay, here we go. Is that everything? Okay. Anything else on your?
Yes, two more motions.
There's a second motion. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
Following the same situation of if acceptable by focus groups, I move that the board direct staff to add the Forging Futures tagline to the board logo and develop a style guide defining usage and application of the logo with and without the tagline.
Second.
We have to add if acceptable by, motion is if acceptable by focus group, that the board directs staff to add the Forging Futures tagline to the board logo and develop a style guide defining usage and application of the logo with and without the tagline. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We're doing the still if. Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed? Will the ayes raise your hand? Board Member Belknap, Board Member Marsh, Board Member Haynes, Board Member Newell, Board Member Davis, Board Member Cannon, Board Member Lear, Board Member Gravitt, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, Mark Huntsman. Got him? Say motion passes.
Okay, so one more quick motion. Maybe.
How come I only have 2 motions down? Now we're doing 3?
They're
I'm just teasing.
Okay. So, so
I don't have a motion, but.
the board approved down to the strategy level, the language, the explicit language. So as the teams have been working to implement the strategies, they have a couple of recommendations for changes to the language. So under strategy 2A, so this strategy is around supporting districts and schools and providing effective mentoring for beginning educators and leaders. The original language the current language includes coaching, but coaching is more of a function later in the career. So mentoring is for beginning educators. So we kind of had a disconnect where we explicitly mentioned beginning educators and leaders, but yet we've included both mentoring and coaching. So that didn't really make sense. So it's just to eliminate that word and those words and coaching. Then under the safe and healthy schools strategies, there were 3. All 3 of those, the amended language is to address the issue of the strategy that is currently there is more input focused, more action focused versus being a strategy, which would be more output or outcome oriented. So if you look under strategy 3A, that's currently develop and adopt uniform guidelines for school safety plans and protocols. To develop and adopt those guidelines is more of an action, more of an input that can be done within a year. But the new language of support districts and schools in creating and maintaining conditions for safe learning environments is more of an outcome, more of a strategy. It's the same with under 3B. So the strategy had been promote evidence-based student health and wellness practices. Again, more of an input. What's the actual outcome we're looking for there? It's to increase the adoption of evidence-based student health and wellness practices. And also that term promote was really throwing off staff in terms of our role and what that looks like. Is that a communications PR thing or exactly what that would look like? So, and then lastly with 3C, that was increase access to resources to meet students' mental, emotional, and social needs. And the amendment would be to shift that to building the capacity of educators and other stakeholders to meet those same mental, emotional, and social needs of students. So those are the proposed tweaks to the language of a few strategies.
Okay, any questions? Okay, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
Is it okay if I make a motion?
You could call it as presented in
Okay.
motion 3.
Okay, I move that the board amend the language of USBE strategies as presented in motion 3.
We have a motion and second. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Jenny Earl.
I just have a question on 3B. Increase adoption of, I wonder we could adopt a whole bunch of stuff that never gets used, right? I just wonder if that would be increased usage of evidence-based student health. But is that coming from district or from us, or do you know what I mean?
So this would be, it's a great question, it would be at the local level. So
Okay.
it's going from us just doing like a very time-limited action of promoting or strategy of promoting to actually being able to measure LEAs adopting their own policies and practices.
Okay, so we're helping them increase their adoption? Is that what we're doing?
We're supporting and providing technical assistance, but we're measuring how the increase in the number of LEAs that do adopt their own policies and practices. That
Okay.
would be the output that we're measuring.
Okay, so not necessarily the usage of those programs, but just that they're adopting them. I guess that's my question. One, just because they're adopting them does not mean they're using the best evidence base. Where I just am wondering if usage would be a better term, or maybe not. Maybe adoption is the best term there. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I think the
So,
challenge, if
okay.
I may, Chair Hudson,
Yeah.
I think the challenge is for us to measure usage in classrooms and
Versus
schools.
adoption, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Leave it where it's at.
Board Member Scott Nielsen.
Or me. I'm playing
He's
up here.
gone.
Yeah, but I'm playing up here now.
Okay, Board Member Belknap.
I have a clarifying question, may I ask?
Yes.
Chair? Tiffany, even when you said this, you said build the capacity. Do you want the in between there, or do you want it how it's written?
Either way.
I don't know what's most appropriate, so. Okay, thanks.
What did Carol say?
Okay, any other? Okay, where's our motion? I know, okay, but it's, will you restate it? But you haven't put it up, will you? You just said change our strategic plan, but I want to get it word for word. Miss Lorraine, yeah, it's going to be on.
Okay, the motion is that the board amend the language of USBE's strategies as follows. Under Strategy 2A, delete the words "and coaching." Replace Strategy 3A, develop and adopt uniform guidelines for school safety plans and protocols with support districts and schools in creating and maintaining conditions for safe and healthy learning environments. Under Strategy 3B, delete promote and insert increase adoption of. And under Strategy 3C, delete increase teacher, school, and LEA access to resources and replace with build capacity of educators and other stakeholders.
Okay. That's the motion before the board. Not seeing any further discussion, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting passes unanimously. Now I'm going off my script here, and I'm not seeing a number 4, but I'm back in the documents, and it ends at 3. So is that?
Yeah, that concludes our presentation, Chair Huntsman, and we appreciate the board's input. We will work with our firm, our contracted firm, to set up the focus groups.
Before you go, Board Member Cindy Davis.
I move that pending final acceptance of the tagline, that in the vision statement, the words "lead meaningful lives" be replaced with "forge meaningful futures," and I'd like to speak to the motion.
Can you repeat one more time? Slower.
I move that pending final acceptance of tagline, that in the vision statement, the words "lead meaningful lives" be replaced with "forge meaningful futures." And I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Board Member Marsh, speak to the motion. Board Member Davis.
I think if we do adopt the tagline, we as a community are working to forge futures. Our students have a role to play in that as well, and this would tie in what our vision for the students can do. It will tie into what the message we're trying to send, that we as an educational community are doing. If we don't ultimately get good feedback on this focus group, and we don't adopt Forging Futures as a tagline, then I may still come back, because we use the word "lead" twice in the same sentence, yet it means different things, and it interrupts the sentence fluency. In my opinion, I think it should be "build meaningful lives" or "create meaningful lives" or something. But regardless, if we accept a tagline of Forging Futures, which when I think of forging, I think of like dynamite building a tunnel through a mountain, and I'm in classrooms all the time for my job. And I will tell you, what we are doing in education is hard work. There's not a day I go into a school that I don't walk out thinking, this is hard work. There is not a day that I see kids that are up against hard mountains in their own lives. And so whether or not we adopt this tagline, there is certainly a lot of forging going on in our community by all of our stakeholders and by our students. So I just think this is a way to tie what we envision the students doing into the tagline, should we adopt it.
Okay, the motion is that pending final, you ready? The motion before the board is that pending final acceptance of the Forging Futures tagline in the vision statement, replace, quote, lead meaningful lives, end quote, with forge meaningful futures. Is that, is this correct? As the second hit, so. Okay, is that? All right, that's a motion before the board. I'm not seeing any discussion, so let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Well, the ayes, raise your hand. Okay, we have Board Member Marsh, Board Member Haynes, Board Member Newell, Board Member Belknap, Board Member Davis, Board Member Cannon, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, Mark Huntsman, that's 9. Motion passes. Thank you for your presentation. Okay. Moving right along into our agenda. Seeking a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of individuals. Second? Okay, roll call vote. We'll start with Board Member Scott Hansen.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we're in executive. We're going into executive session as soon as we clear the room and mark the doors.